like Member Sokach is here as well.
Okay. Hi, everyone. May I have a mover and a seconder to call this meeting to order? So Mike and Henry. That this Committee of Adjustments meeting held on February 22nd, 2023 come to order at 6 p.m. All in favor? Carried. Are there any disclosure of pecuniary interest this evening? Let the record show that there are none. Previous minutes, may I have a mover and a seconder to call this meeting to order? Steve and Henry. That the Committee of Adjustments minutes dated January 25th, 2023 be adopted as presented. All in favor? Carried. Sorry, 1 second. No, it's not working. Sorry. Welcome to this Committee of Adjustments meeting to allow the public an opportunity to express their views regarding the proposed minor variances and consents within the Township of Springwater. Each applicant and their agent is, if applicable, will be given the opportunity to present the application to the committee and public. Additional information of each of the applications included, any presentation materials available in the committee agenda in the township's website. Following those members of the public who registered to make oral submissions prior to 5:30 yesterday, February 21st, 2023, will be given the opportunity to do so. All oral submissions will be included in this minutes meetings and form part of the public record, including the name and address of the speaker as information collected under the Municipal Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy Act. The minutes of the meeting will be posted on the township website. All comments or questions should be addressed through the chair. Application 1, will the Secretary Treasurer please introduce the first application, item number 4.1 on the agenda.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Item 4.1 on the agenda is a minor variance application A0123 submitted by M. Lowry, owner of lands municipally known as 2171 North Or Lake Road. The purpose and effect of the application is to permit the construction of a new seasonal dwelling replacement cottage with a reduced side yard width of 1.48 meters, 4.86 feet on the east side of the dwelling, whereas section 1434C permits a minimum interior side yard width of 2.5 meters or 8.2 feet.
Have any additional correspondence and or comments been received?
Thank you,
Secretary. Sorry.
That's okay. Thank you, Madam Chair. We have received comments from the Ministry of Transportation stating that the site is outside the MTO permit control area and therefore a permit or review is not required. Also from the Director of Finance stating that development charges may be applicable in accordance with the development charges bylaw. And from a neighboring resident, Mr. Bob Cizaskis of 2173 and 2177 North Or Lake Road, in a letter dated February 21st, 2023, stating his opposition to the application.
Can I please have the applicant introduce themselves and provide comment, if any?
Good evening, Madam Chair and committee members. My name is Saba Al-Metno. I'm from QBS Architects. I am the client's agent. I am unable to start my video, so I am not sure if that's something technical.
There you go.
Okay, it's working now. So I would like to just quickly give you an overview about what we are proposing. My clients had owned the property since 1998. It's been in the family, but it was there was a cottage, existing cottage on it. This cottage was like falling apart, and they decided to demolish this cottage and plan a replacement. So it will be the summer home for my client and her 3 kids and their grandkids. So when we designed this property, we had the challenges of the type of soil and the size of septic. Also, we tried to do some improvements. For example, we pulled the cottage away from the lake to give more space, better than the previous cottage. Hence, we are before you because we have one variance, which is the side yard setback 1.48 meter, due to the limitation of the existing lot being a narrow lot, and most of the front of it was taken by the septic. So we came up with the design before you. We don't have any height variances. We don't have any other variance. That was the only one. We worked closely with the Conservation Authority for about like 6 months back and forth, and they were satisfied with our proposal. I have reviewed the neighbors' letter, and I can assure him like this is not planned to be an Airbnb or something like that. This is a true family cottage, and I believe he knows the family very well. That's what they conveyed to me when I discussed with them. In terms of windows overlooking, we have limited the windows on both sides. So the 1.2 meter side, we have 0 windows. On the 1.45, we have 2 windows on the ground floor and only 1 window on the second floor, which is a bathroom. We could easily reduce the size of this window, and we are prepared to do like film to provide privacy. In terms of the rooftop patio, also we are prepared to install privacy screen on both sides. So because everybody's privacy would be respected. So this is just an overview, and I am here to answer any questions. He did bring up also the fire protections and unprotected openings. That's for sure will be taken care of during the building permit process. Everything will be designed as per the Ontario Building Code.
Thank you. Are there any members of the public registered to make an oral submission?
Chair, yes, there is one member of the public who is registered to make an oral submission, Bob Sisakis of 2173-2177 North Ore Lake Road. You may now address the committee with your questions or concerns.
Go ahead.
I'm not able to see my own video there. Is that supposed to be on?
Your video is not on at this time.
I'm just trying to put it on here. It says you cannot start your video because the host has stopped it.
There you
Okay, there
go.
it is.
See you now.
Okay. My name is Bob Sisakis, and I am the owner of 2173 and 2177 North Ore Lake Road. And I'm expressing my strong opposition to this application that's submitted by 2171 North Ore Lake Road. One of the main reasons is sunlight. And when we planned our cottage around the concept of there being 8.2 feet between us and our neighbor, and again, if this application is passed, there will be a reduced amount of sunlight coming into our home drastically. The drawings also submitted show that it's a flat roof, which has a overhang of about a 1.5 to 2 feet, which will bring the actual dwelling or the construction to under 3 feet to the property line, with this being more of a negative impact on the sunlight coming into our home. The second thing I had was fire concerns. when we planned our location, which is 2173 North Orlick Road, we're still in the process of building. We were limited to the number of windows that we were able to put on the other side, which is the east side of our cottage. And this was all due to the fire code. On the west side, which is their side of the cottage, we have concerns because all our bedroom windows are on that side there. And that's where they're proposing to build the dwelling. In case of a fire, it would be detrimental and the fire would spread very easily and quickly to our home and vice versa. Another concern that we have is privacy. I mean, a cottage is a place to get away and relax. When you drive around the lake, you'll notice that the cottages that are there all have space between them. They're all built in such a way that you can go and have your privacy. We left an allowable 8.2 feet of setback between our two properties. Our two properties meaning where we are now, 2173, and the one beside me, which I own, 2177. And we did this when we were in the planning process. There is ample space also between 2171 and 2165, which is on the other side, which is what I'm talking about, having space between cottages. Our neighbor is planning on building with a rooftop patio that is notably out of character for our neighborhood. The fact that there will be a rooftop patio so close to our bedrooms and the nursery would allow me to believe that there would be a lot of noise. This would also affect our way of life and comfort when visiting our cottage. Nowadays, with options like Airbnb, I know she mentioned Airbnb before, but this place has been rented in the past by them, and I'm sure the young kids will be renting it down the road. So thinking about Airbnb, I can only imagine the parties that would be carried out on a rooftop that would go on right beside our heads at all hours of the night. We have 2 grandchildren under the age of 2 that would be disrupted in their sleep if there's considerable noise coming from the rooftop. All in all, I wanted to say that this isn't Yorkville in Toronto, and it's not Miami in Florida with these rooftop patios. It's Springwater, Ontario. Accessibility. Having less than 8.2 feet reduces the allowable access to the front, which is the side of the lake. And this is a concern for us for both fire and ambulance, should it be necessary or need arise. And the last thing I want to say is property value. We have invested over $1 million in our cottage. And the last thing we want is to have a dwelling built right smack between us, affecting the resale value in the future. When we were planning our build, we looked and examined at all of this to ensure a positive outcome that would work for all parties. So I'm asking that you please consider my concerns, and thank you for allowing me to speak. I'm done with my part.
Thank you very much. Do any members of the committee wish to comment or have any questions concerning the application? Steve?
Through you, Madam Chair, to staff, is there, in terms of the development charges that would be applied to this development, should it be approved? The property is currently vacant. How long does the property have to remain vacant before DCs are reapplied to the property?
Deputy Secretary?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through yourself to Member Farquharson. My understanding is that there is 5 years in which a credit could be applied for development charges before development charges will be applicable again.
Okay. If I have a couple of other questions, Madam Chair, if I could.
Yep, go ahead.
I mean, one thing to be aware of this for the community members is that we are looking at a setback, and while the buildings, the house looks pretty and there's a rooftop patio there, we are looking at a setback provision that is being applied for us to consider. I don't particularly have an issue with the proposed setbacks. I think this site is very constrained in terms of where they can place the dwelling. You can't go further towards the lake, otherwise MBCA will probably have a concern with that. And then you also have the septic system in the front. And you can't shift it too far, and then you'll have issues coming forward from any other applicable agency that may have concerns with it. I don't have a concern with what's being proposed by the applicant. The issue with Airbnbs, and perhaps staff can provide some clarification to this. Is there any sort of short-term rental licensing bylaw or anything like that that's currently in effect or currently in the works with council?
Go
Can I
ahead,
say-
Deputy Secretary.
Can I say something here?
What?
Can I say something to
Yeah,
Steve?
let the Deputy Secretary speak first, and then I'll address you, okay? Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you to Member Farquharson. At this time, the township does not have short-term rental bylaw or licensing requirements. I believe earlier this year, late last year, this is something that council asked staff to look into at a very preliminary stage. However, there's nothing official in the works at this time.
So through you, Madam Chair, if there is a complaint on a short-term rental, you would be using, you'd be using your existing bylaws in place, such as noise and litter and all that stuff. Okay,
Correct.
right. That's everything, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Go ahead, Bob, you can speak.
Steve mentioned something about they set back and all that. There is a setback from the lake. I think it's 60 feet, which they adhere to. That's no problem. Even though they are just set back behind my cottage, which is great. But the fact that they have over 300 feet doesn't mean they can't just elongate their cottage by whatever they need to get that extra foot or whatever it is they're going after. I'm more concerned about light and everything else that we were talking about. Like I put all my windows on there, and now all of a sudden my windows are all useless. It doesn't make sense. Like they should be able to elongate the cottage and build what they want to build on the property they have. It's over 300 feet long. There's no reason why they can't stretch it a bit.
Thank you for your concern. Is there any other committee member who would like to speak? Go ahead, Brad.
I just like confirmation from Deputy Secretary Belcourt. The fire chief was circulated on this and did not have any comments. Is that correct?
Go ahead, Deputy Secretary.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you to Member Sokach. Yes, all of senior staff was circulated on this application. No comments were received from the fire department. Just to add to that, as the applicant agent stated, through the building permit process, they will be required to meet Ontario Building Code requirements, including any fire code related matters.
Go ahead, Brad.
Through the
Okay,
chair, just one more question. With respect to the overhang, is the setback to the overhang or to the building wall? That's just clarification for me.
Deputy Secretary.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you to Member Sokach. The measurement is to the wall of the structure, as long as it's a traditional overhang, which is generally 1.5 to 2 feet, somewhere in that ballpark. If it was something that needs to be cantilevered or have posts down, then we would measure to the post.
Okay. Thank you. So,
Go ahead, Henry.
Through you, Madam Chair, to Deputy Secretary. Just the other thing is with regards to water coming off the roof, it wouldn't be affecting that, being the lot being closer.
Deputy Secretary.
Sorry, I accidentally hit expand instead of unmute. Through you, Madam Chair, to Member Vanderwillen. The applicant is responsible for maintaining the drainage on their own property and would need to direct any eave troughs, that kind of thing, away from the neighboring property.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I believe Steve had a question. Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair, to staff. So if this application were to be supported by the committee, what mechanism does staff put in place to verify that setback is being maintained at the building permit stage? So is there a requirement for OLS verification or staff verifying that setback on site? If you can provide that information, that'd be great. Thank you.
Deputy Secretary.
Thank you, Madam Chair, through you to Member Farquharson. Sorry, you did cut out briefly on me, so I hope I understood this, but just to recap, you're confirming at the building permit stage how we can confirm the setback is accurate. Yes. Okay, perfect. So we don't typically require an OLS, although we can. We typically rely on our building inspecting staff to confirm the setback is accurate. If at any point they were unsure if the setback was accurate, they could ask for an OLS to come.
Thank you. I do have one question, Deputy Secretary. So with the comments of the residents, does the staff have to address that before we go on like council, or is it run differently?
Sorry, you cut out there
Oh,
on me.
sorry.
I'm assuming it's my internet, so I just turned my video off.
So I was just wondering if with the comments from the neighbor and residents, do the staff have to address those comments before it can move on? Or is it run differently?
Yeah, no, not a problem. Chair Chapman. So the comments are presented to the committee along with the staff report for the committee's consideration this evening. So I believe the applicant's agent has addressed some of them. Should the committee have any more questions, applicant agent or myself are here to address them. But that's how we address the questions at committee. So they do not move on further from here.
Okay, thank you.
No problem.
Mike?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Listening to the applicant and the opposition, the opposition comments and the points that I heard, to me, those are points that if it were flipped to the applicant's property, the issues of noise, proximity, sunlight, and the ability to rent it would be the same to the applicant's lifestyle. If the opposer decided to rent his property out to Airbnb, it would be the same situation. So to me, it's not only one-sided, it works both ways.
Can I
Thank you,
say
Mike.
something?
Pardon?
Can I say something?
Yeah, go ahead, Bob.
Yeah, I don't have a rooftop patio. They have a rooftop patio. So when it comes to would it be the same? No, it wouldn't be. They're the ones that would be on the roof.
Thank you for your.
This isn't a normal.
Thank you for your.
Sorry, this isn't a normal dwelling.
Is there any other comments from
Wanda.
Is there any other comments from the committee members? Can I have a mover and a seconder for the application 01/23 2171 North Orr Lake Road?
I'll
Madam
move
Chair,
that the
this is,
application be approved.
I will second that.
And Brad? The committee has the option to approve, deny, and defer application A01/23. Based on the discussion and my understanding, the committee is looking to approve with conditions, deny, defer the application. Any other comments?
I move, Madam Chair, that the application be approved. Thank you.
I will second that if needed.
Thank you. That the Committee of Adjustments, having given consideration to the application provision of Section 45 of the Planning Act, the official plan of the Township of Springwater, the characteristics of the land in question and its surroundings as addressed in the planning report on the application dated February 22nd, 2023, the correspondence received and information presented at the hearing held on February 22nd, 2023, and the discussion on the matter hereby approve application A01/23 as applied for. The committee members, is all in favor? Sorry. Carried. Thank you for all your comments and thank you.
Thank you.
Well, the second, application number 2, will the Secretary Treasurer please introduce the next application, item number 4.2 on the agenda?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Item 4.2 on the agenda is consent application B0223 submitted by Kay Chisholm on behalf of Claros GP Inc., owner of lands known municipally as Part 11 and Part Lot 12, known as Midhurst Heights. The purpose of the application is to sever approximately 42.7 hectares, 105.51 acres of lot area with approximately 623.4 meters of frontage on Russell Road, as well as frontage on Doran Road. The applicant proposes to retain approximately 54.9 hectares, equaling 135.66 acres of lot area with approximately 610.4 meters of frontage along Gill Road and 83.1 meters of frontage along Russell Road.
Have any additional correspondence or comments been received?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, we have received correspondence from the drainage superintendent stating that the property is not assessed into a municipal drain. The Ministry of Transportation stating that the site are not within MTO permit control areas and do not require MTO permit or approval. The Director of Finance stated no comment, and Hydro One stated no comments or concerns at this time.
Thank you. Can I please have the applicant introduce themselves and provide comment, if any? Welcome.
Good evening, staff and members of the committee. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Perfect, thanks. So my name is Corey Chisholm. I'm a partner with MHBC Planning in our Barrie office. I'm also here this evening with our client, Andrew Webster with Claros Inc., the owners of the lands. I do have a brief presentation to walk the committee through. So I'll just ask that I share my screen and take everyone through that, and then we're happy to answer any questions members of the committee might have.
Sure, no problem.
And can you see that okay?
Yeah, I can, yeah, we can see it.
Perfect. So the purpose of the application before you this evening is a consent for severance application. Typically, when you see these severance applications come forward, applicants are proposing to sever new lots, commonly for building new homes or potentially commercial buildings or something to that effect. This severance is a little bit different, as we are proposing a severance on a large parcel of land that is currently draft plan approved and zoned for a large residential subdivision in the Midhurst Heights secondary plan area. So I'll walk you through that. The proposed severance is largely technical in nature and doesn't actually impact any of the existing planning approvals. I'm sure everyone's familiar with the location of the site, but here's an aerial showing the site. It is bounded by Gill Road on the west, Russell Road on the east, and Doran Road along the south. So just some relevant planning history on the site. The Midhurst Heights subdivision, the zoning amendment and draft plan of subdivision were approved in 2014. Subsequent to that, a minor red line revision was approved back in 2019. That was in order to incorporate some additional requested road widenings along both Doran Road and Russell Road. Detailed engineering design is currently advanced for phases 1A through D, which are the first phases that will proceed to construction, and earthworks is currently underway on those phases. Additionally, there was a small parcel of land, 2351 Gill Road, that had a zoning bylaw amendment approved on that last year. And through a future application, those lands will be added to the overall subdivision. So this is just an image of the approved zoning that's in effect today. And this is an image of the approved Midhurst Heights subdivision. So this is the approved phasing plan for the subdivision. So what this identifies is kind of the order and procedure that a site this large will build out. over time. You will see phases 1A through E momentarily, and that will form the severance line that's proposed this evening, and that largely follows the phasing that the site will build out in. So the proposed severance this evening is to sever the site into 2 separately conveyable parcels along the phasing boundaries between phases 1A and 1E, and then the remaining phases 1F through 1K. And that's proposed to solely reverse an unexpected merger and title that previously occurred. The lands, when acquired, were a number of different properties. And when the project initially started, those were in different company names. They were placed all into one company name. And when that happens, there is a nuance under the Planning Act in Ontario that actually causes those properties to automatically merge together and become one property. That has challenges from a developer's perspective when looking to secure development financing. And that is why we're looking to split those properties into 2 so that separate financing can be pursued on those parcels. So coming back to the approved phasing plan, the severance line would be the boundary between phases 1A through E and the remaining phases. And here you can see how that would play out. So the blue would be one parcel and the red would be a second parcel. And as a draft plan of subdivision like this is registered in phases, as you register phases, those naturally essentially sever them off the balance of the property. So effectively, this severance would occur once phases 1A through E are registered. Our application is just advancing that, as I mentioned, for the purposes of development financing. So through our application, we did review the relevant planning framework. That involved the provincial planning policy, the provincial growth plan, the County of Simcoe's official plan, the Township of Springwater's official plan, which includes the Midhurst secondary plan, as well as the Township zoning bylaw. Through our review of these relevant plans and policies, it was our determination that the proposed severance conforms and is consistent with all of those plans. As mentioned, the proposed severance is technical in nature. And what I mean by that is it doesn't actually impact the layout or the existing approvals for the subdivision, the lots, the zoning. None of that is proposed to change through this. It's again, merely to split the site into 2 pieces for separate development financing. And that split would naturally happen in the future as the subdivision builds out in phases. There is a nuance with the proposed application as it relates to the existing approvals. The original approval I mentioned on the draft plan and zoning amendment were originally approved at the Ontario Municipal Board, now referred to the Ontario Land Tribunal. The effect of this proposed consent will have an impact on one of the existing conditions of draft plan approval, and that's to update the legal description associated with that draft plan condition. We have discussed this with township staff leading up to the proposed application, and our client is aware following approval of the proposed severance that through our client's legal team that we will need to advise the OLT that an update to that first draft plan condition is required to reflect that change in the legal description. So in conclusion, the proposed severance before you this evening is technical in nature and is meant to reverse previous merger and title of the different parcels. That severance is proposed along the phase boundaries that were shown previously. It's my opinion they're consistent with and conform to the relevant planning policy framework. There's no impact to the existing zoning that's proposed, and both parcels that are proposed to be severed would meet minimum zoning frontage and lot areas. And generally will have no impact to the existing planning approvals. As mentioned, there is one minor update we will need to go back to the OLT with following the approval to get the draft plan condition updated. So with that, I'd like to thank everyone for their time this evening, and happy to answer any questions members of the committee may have.
Thank you very much. Are there any members of the public registered to make an oral submission?
Thank you. There are no members of the public who have registered to make an oral submission.
Thank you. Do any members of the committee wish to commit or comment or have any questions concerning this application?
I do, Madam Chair.
Oh, hi.
Or Brad,
welcome.
did you have one?
No, you can go ahead, Chris.
Just with the Madam Chair and the committee, I'm here just because I'm a property owner at 2290 Russell Road. And when I received the public hearing notice, my address was on it as an incorrect address, so it's pretty minor. I'm sure that can be corrected, but just want to make sure that that was addressed. I believe the proper address was 2294 for the land behind me. And speaking with Mr. Spagnol earlier today, the director for Springwater, he just told me, even though they're not part of the, which I don't have a problem with them trying to sever the one parcel into two parcels. He just said to at least address a few concerns to open some dialogue between ourselves and the landowners behind us and developers. Because there's been no contact until this point, and I see why, because of the incorrect address. Maybe we were just kind of missed on a lot of occasions. And just with a lot of the concerns with the homes just backing onto us, which won't affect the severance of the single property into two properties. But again, Brent just asked me to address a few things just to open some dialogue. So there's some watershed issues and some peering and privacy issues and a few other things, but we can go over that at a later date.
Thank you. I was wondering that why your address is in there. When I went by, you had the house. So I was wondering if it was going to be demolished, but it looked like it was well lived in. So thank you for clearing that. So Deputy Treasurer, is that going to be revised of the 2294 instead of 2290?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, we can definitely ensure that that address is revised going forward, starting with the notice of decision following tonight's decision. I believe the confusion came as 2290 was severed off of a larger parcel in the past, which created some confusion with the two addressing. So yeah, we will certainly revise that.
Thank you. Brad, you have a question? Comment?
I do. Thank you, Madam Chair. I had some more questions, but Director Spagnol was good enough to have a chat with me this afternoon. So many of them have been satisfied or have been answered to my satisfaction. I do have a few, I think they're minor ones. First of all, Mr. Chisholm indicated that the phasing was approved. And I believe when I spoke to Director Spagnol this earlier today, that was still to be approved under the masters under some agreement. Perhaps Director Spagnol, you could clarify for me.
Go ahead, Director Spagnol.
Thank you, Chair Mach-Chapman. The discussion revolving around the phasing really is that there's a phasing plan that's brought through the condition process. And because there's the MLG, which is the Midhurst Landowners Group, phasing has to be cleared as a condition of approval in line with the Midhurst Landowners Group. So Mr. Chisholm is correct in that the phasing has been accepted as has been presented, but the actual rollout of those subdivisions is subject to the consideration of the MLG for construction purposes.
Okay.
Thank you. You have another question, Brad?
Madam Chair, I have a few questions, if you don't mind me just
Sure,
popping
just
through them.
continue.
Okay. The second question I had was, you indicated that this severance is solely to reverse a previous unexpected merger of the lands. Is this following the previous break in the property, or is this a different cut through the property the way this is severed?
Who would like to answer that?
It's probably Mr. Chisholm.
I'm happy to
Chisholm?
answer that, and that's a
Thank you.
great question. And the short answer is it's not. It does not follow the exact fabric that the properties were previously. When we looked at this with the existing approvals in place and that phasing, as mentioned, when those phases start to register sequentially, they will essentially sever themselves off from the balance of the property. So when we reviewed it internally and through discussions with the team at the township, we thought it made sense to follow that or to sever that along phase boundaries where they'll naturally sever in the future. If we followed the previous lot lines and then we start to sever these phases, it would have the effect of kind of chopping it up in different ways that would be less ideal than what's proposed with this layout.
Thanks for that clarification. If I may continue.
Yes.
I also noticed a big for sale sign along the property line. Is that for this property or is it just coincidental for another property?
That I'm not familiar with directly. We can certainly take that back to our client. It's my understanding the site, the development site is not for sale. There may be some of the parcels along any of the frontages that are currently for sale. But I couldn't point to a specific property that is for sale. I see a response here in the chat that it's for another property.
Okay, it's neither here nor there it's more something I was curious about. And finally, when I was out there doing a site visit, there's quite a bit of topsoil. Looks like most of the site has been stripped. I don't know what my question is because I think Brent answered it and I shouldn't have brought this up. I apologize. Madam Chair, you can go on to the next. Thank you, Mr. Chisholm.
Thank you. I
Thank
believe
you.
Mike has a question. You're no.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say it was a private sign that's on that. I think that was the Frankham property.
Director Spagno.
Thank you, Chair Chapman. And I can just, I can inform the committee that Mr. Sokach's, remember Sokach's question was with regards to the cut and fill and the stripping of the topsoil and whether or not there was any township regulation that was in place to deal with that. And really just for the information of the committee, the developer has gone through the necessary agreements and whatnot to facilitate the stripping of topsoil and the stockpiling. So therefore, because they've gone through that process, the regulation of the township's bylaw doesn't apply because we're dealing with conditions of approval and engineering that's specifically dealing with topsoil and stockpiling and things of that nature.
Thank you. I have one question. With the address at 154 Doran, they have an old farmhouse. Will that be demolished? Yes, Mr. Chisholm, that would be you.
Yeah, it's my understanding the existing structures on the property will all be demolished. That's one of the latest phases of the development along Doran Road. So it won't be for some time until we get to that phase where we would have to be doing the same exercise of the earthworks.
Thank you. Any other questions? Oh, Steve, go ahead.
Through you, Madam Chair, to Director Spagnol. The staff report provides a comment there that the application be approved subject to standard conditions of approval. Can you provide an outline of what those standard conditions typically are that staff includes in these types of applications? Thank you.
Director Spagno.
Thank you, Chair Chapman, through you to Member Farquharson. So standard conditions would require a survey, confirmation of an M plan. In order for the certificates to be filed, we'd also have to have a draft transfer to make sure that the certificates and whatnot are properly drafted. One condition that could be added to Mr. Chisholm's comment would be a condition requiring that the revision be made to the draft plan conditions to correctly reflect the legal description of the property so that the draft plan conditions are applied. But typically it would be those 2 or 3 conditions plus confirmation of the applicability of the Drainage Act, things like that. Basically that the developer needs to be, or the property owner has to be in good financial standing with the municipality. And those would generally be the conditions that would be applied to this severance application.
Thank you, Director Spagnuolo. Is there any more questions from council or from the committee? Seeing none. Can I have a mover and a seconder for the application B02/23 Midhurst Heights? Steve and Mike. That the committee has the option to approve, subject to condition, deny or defer application B02/23 based on the discussion and my understanding, the committee is looking to approve with conditions, deny, defer the applications. Any comments? Go ahead, Steve.
Through Madam Chair, I recommend we approve it with conditions and with the additional condition that Director Spagnuolo said should be added to this application. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? Mike?
I recommend approving it as well. I've been the subject of an inadvertent merging of property. And this is not the time to pile on the applicant who has have to go through this because their lands have merged. So I'm in favor.
Thank you. The Committee of Adjustments, having given consideration to the that the Committee of Adjustments having given consideration to the applicant provisions of the Section 53 of the Planning Act, the official plan of the Township of Springwater, the characteristics of the subject land and its surrounding as addressed in the planning report on the subject application dated February 22nd, 2023, the correspondent received and the information presented at the hearing held on February 22nd, 2023, and the decision of the matter hereby approved of the application as applied and subject to the following conditions. 1, that the applicant meet all the requirements, financial or otherwise, of the municipality. 2, that the applicant approve 2 copies of the registered survey of the combined land prepared on the Ontario Land Surveyor. And 3, that the owner applicant satisfy any and be responsible for all costs to satisfy Section 65 of the Drainage Act 1990 if applicable. All in favor? Oh, sorry, Deputy Treasurer. Do you have a
seconder?
Sorry, thank you, Chair Chapman. The second condition should read a survey of the severed lands instead of survey of conveyed lands. And I believe Director Spagnuolo has something further to add.
Go ahead, Director Spagnuolo.
Thank you, Chair Ma Chapman. And the only suggestion I would have is that the conditions be modified to include something to the effect that the owner/developer be required to apply for a red line to revise the draft plan conditions to reflect the appropriate legal description for the subject properties that is for the subject property that is to be severed and retained.
You're going to add that in. Is everyone okay with that? All in favor? Carried.
Thanks, everyone. Have a good evening.
Thank you. Thank you. Application number 3, will the Treasury Secretary please introduce the next application, item number 4.3 on the agenda. Deputy Secretary?
I believe Member Vanderwielen has something to add.
Oh, sorry, go ahead, Henry.
Through you, Chair. Was there a seconder done on that first motion?
Yes, Steve and Mike.
Okay, thank you.
Go ahead, Deputy Secretary.
Thank you. Through you, Chair Chapman, to the committee. Item 4.3 on the agenda is consent application B0323 submitted by Norm Franks, owner of lands known municipally as 1749 Story Road. The purpose of this application is to sever a single new residential lot from an existing rural residential parcel, which consists of one single detached dwelling. The subject lands are located within the rural area and consists of approximately 0.71 hectares or 1.77 acres of lot area with approximately 94.1 meters of frontage along Story Road and 75.7 meters of frontage along Old Second South.
Have any additional correspondence and or comments been received?
Thank you. Yes. Comments have been received from the drainage superintendent stating that the property is not assessed into a municipal drain. From the Ministry of Transportation stating that the site is outside of MTO control area and does not require MTO review or permits. From the Director of Finance stating development charges are applicable as per Township Development Charges Bylaw 2021-117. Hydro One stated that they had no comments or concerns at this time. The Nottawasaga Valley Conservation Authority reviewed the proposed consent and based on their mandate and policies under the Conservation Authorities Act, provide conditional support of the application as proposed, pending final approval of a constraint analysis that meets section 312D of the PPS 2020.
Thank you. Can I please have the applicant introduce themselves and provide comment, if any? Welcome, Mr. Franks.
Yeah, good evening. How you doing? My name is Norm Franks, and I'm here on behalf of my parents, Peter and Karen Duker. My parents are requesting a consent to sever their property located at 1749 Story Road. The proposed new lot measures approximately 140 feet by 180 feet deep. We're confident that the proposed severance meets all the necessary requirements for the consideration and is consistent with the policies and regulations governing land use in the area. It's also in keeping with the surrounding lots, both in size and setbacks. We sincerely hope that the committee will approve our application for severance. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you. Are there any members of the public registered to make an oral submission?
Thank you. There are no members of the public who have registered to make an oral submission.
Thank you. Do any members of the committee wish to comment or have any questions concerning this application? Brad?
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is just for the Deputy Secretary Belcourt. I noticed the public agency comments were updated today at 2:30. Was that the NVCA update?
Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you to Member Sokach. The comments from the Conservation Authority, I believe they were added on Friday. However, they had to revise them yesterday and I wasn't here, so they were updated today to the to their newest format, but comments were originally provided on the 17th.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to make sure I wasn't missing anything. And in general, I don't see an issue with this severance except for getting through the NVCA might be a long road to hoe, and you should just be aware of that.
Any other comments or questions? Can I have a mover and a seconder for application B03/23 for 1749 Story Road? Mike and Henry. That the committee has the option to approve, subject to conditions, deny or defer application B03/23 based on the decision and my understanding that the committee is looking to approve with conditions, deny, defer the application. Any comments? That the Committee of Adjustments, having given consideration to the applicant applicable provisions of this Section 53 of the Planning Act, the official plan of the Township of Springwater, the characteristics of the subject land and its surrounding as addressed in the planning report on the subject application dated February 22nd, 2023, that the correspondence received and information presented at the hearing held on February 22nd, 2023, and the decision on the matter hereby approved of the application as applied for subject to the following conditions. 1, the applicant meet all requirements, financial or otherwise, of the municipality, including posting of securities. 2, that the applicant provide 2 copies of the registered survey of the severed lot prepared by the Ontario Land Surveyor. 3, that the owner applicant satisfy and be responsible for all costs to satisfy Section 65 of the Drainage Act 1990 if applicable. 4, that the applicant provide confirmation that reasonable use guidelines can be met with respect to sanitary services on both the severed and retained lots. 5, that the applicant be required to pay the township a parkland dedication fee for the severed lot in line with the township's parkland dedication policy. 6, that the applicant obtain written approval from the Nottawasaga Valley Conservation Authority with respect to the new driveway entrance for the retained parcel. There's a 7, whether we can want to add it or not. 7, that the applicant approve the constraint hazard analysis in support of the application to the satisfaction of the NVCA, and that the analysis confirm the final lot boundary. So that was added. Go ahead, Steve.
Just through Madam Chair, in regards, I'm okay with the other conditions, but this condition number 7 from the MBCA and them quoting section 3.1.2 sub D of the provincial policy statement. So I'm looking for staff to provide an opinion if they think that condition should be added and if that section of the PPS is being maintained. Thank you.
Banner Russell.
Thank you, through you, Madam Chairman. In this case, the MBCA has identified that the rear of the property is located within the flood fringe, at least partially. To my mind, establishing the actual boundaries and what they've stated is that lot creation should not be permitted within the flood boundary. As such, they're asking that the applicant establish exactly where that line is. I've had numerous discussions with the applicant going back and forth on this matter. That it certainly isn't, and we've advised of a risk in allowing this condition to be attached to the decision. The applicant is aware of that risk, and it is satisfied moving forward that they can establish that, and they're confident that the flood analysis, a constraint analysis, will show that there is no flood constraint on the rear of those properties.
Am I able to comment on this part of it too? I don't know if it's applicable or not, but the property in behind, I was talking to Chris today about this, but to the south of this property, that's between the wetlands that they were concerned about. I believe they had a constraints exercise done. There was an actual topographical survey and what have you. And the low point of where their, I guess the shop is located is probably one of the lowest points on the property, the 1749 Story Road. So I don't know, anyways, not a problem. I think we'll be able to satisfy it with no issues, but I just wanted to make that comment. So. Thank you.
Planner Russell, what would be the difference if we added 7 or not added 7? Of the constraint hazard analysis. Can you just
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, it's up to the committee to include those conditions or not. Certainly, the NVCA would maintain appeal rights, or if they're not satisfied that development can go forward on that parcel, they would maintain appeal rights to the OLT. I think through this discussion, the applicant has spoken numerous occasions with the NVCA, and they've always advised that there would be some form of constraint analysis required to support this application. So to my mind, I'm in favor of including the condition as worded, and staff have provided a little bit extra there that the whatever comes out of that final constraint analysis won't impede the applicant from revising, say, the boundaries slightly to ensure that there's no lot creation within that flood fringe area.
Thank you. Any other comments? I'll go ahead, Steve.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, and that's Planner Russell, was on the same thinking I'm as well. If that condition isn't included, Chris, and this does receive approval and the lot is created, could the MVCA, as part of their permitting process, make them do it anyways to ensure that the dwelling's going to be set back a certain distance? So the applicant could be required to do this regardless if the committee includes it or not, correct?
Yeah, that's my understanding as well. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
So are we all, go ahead, Brad.
Sorry, Madam Chair, I was just going to say I'm in favor of including that condition.
I was just going to ask if we're all in favor of adding 7 into the conditions. So all in favor of adding 7 and approving, all in favor? Carried. Thank you very much, Mr. Franks.
Yeah, thank you, everybody. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Franks.
Have a good night.
You
Thank
too. Other business, there are no other business items identified on tonight's agenda. May I have a mover and a seconder to adjourn this meeting? Henry and Brad, that this Committee of Adjustments meeting held on February 22nd, 2023 now does adjourn at 7 p.m. All in favor? Carried. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks.